Tonight on Steelers Talk, it was another Tomlin Tuesday in the south side of Pittsburgh where he had some very interesting things to say about the Steelers defense in his media availability today that I have some thoughts on. Then Patrick Queen shuts down a popular narrative that is pushed by many people in Steelers Nation on Twitter and on social media. Then we get into the Baltimore Ravens, who may not have Lamar Jackson yet again this week, as he's still not practicing in Baltimore. I'm going to tell you why him not playing this week versus the Chicago Bears could mean the end of the Baltimore Ravens season for good. Now, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Before we get into the content here, guys, if you click that subscribe button and join the over 100,000 Yinzers that have already joined us, all of our content is 100% free. We put out 2 videos a day that usually go, well over 20 minutes of extensive, in-depth, and entertaining Steelers coverage for you guys to enjoy. Of course, with the trade deadline coming up in 2 weeks' time, we'll have breaking news coverage if the con artist makes any big move. And, of course, we go live multiple times a week, including our live watch parties, which are the largest Steelers watch parties anywhere on the YouTube platform. So if you guys want a place to come hang out and, enjoy, some great Steelers content every single day, we like to think we provide that here on Steelers Talk. So if you like Steelers content, you want more of it for free, make sure you click that subscribe button right now. So another week here in Steelers Nation means yet another Tomlin Tuesday, where Coach T took the podium today to preview this week's matchup versus the Green Bay Packers, give some injury updates, answer questions, all that stuff. And speaking of injury updates, we got a very positive one today where Tomlin said he's very optimistic about Calvin Austin III's chances of returning from the shoulder injury that he suffered versus the Minnesota Vikings in Dublin. Of course, he's been out of the lineup for the last few weeks, and Scotty Miller and Roman Wilson have been taking the number 2 receiver reps. Roman took a large portion of the number 2 reps last week versus the Cincinnati Bengals, but with Calvin back in there, he's your man-to-man separator. He's the guy that they really trust to separate versus man coverage, separate to all levels of the field. And this team has missed his speed over the last couple of weeks for sure, even though the offense has been humming as of late. Also, in terms of the injuries of guys that could be returning to practice here soon, Mike Tomlin listed Malik Harrison and Cory Trice Jr. by name today. Of course, Harrison had an injury in week 1 that he's been out for ever since. And then Cory Trice has been on and off with different types of injuries all throughout his NFL career, to be quite frank with you. But Tomlin said those 2 guys are really close to returning. And also they released practice squad quarterback Logan Woodside today. So Will Howard and Skylar Thompson, I would expect at least one of those guys to get back to practice here relatively soon. Both those guys have been on IR for quite a while. So some injury updates there to keep your eye on as the week goes on. But I thought Tomlin had some very interesting things to say about the Steelers defense in particular. Now, there's been a lot of people, including myself, that have complained quite a bit on Steelers Twitter and whatnot about Nick Herbig only having 29 snaps versus the Cincinnati Bengals, and Tomlin was asked about why that was, and his answer for that was that Nick Herbig, isn't a great run defender essentially, and they were trying to stop the run, so they didn't want to put him out there on the field when they were trying to stop the run. And I'm sorry, man. Like I defend Mike Tomlin a lot on this show, as you guys know, but that's a BS answer to me. That is an unacceptable answer to me, because I'm tired of people kind of slighting Nick Herbig as somebody that's like a liability in run defense and makes this run defense unit worse. If anything, he's actually made the Steelers' run defense better. Let's just take a look at some numbers here, okay? So this has been the overall season numbers for the Pittsburgh Steelers in terms of run defense and their run defense effectiveness, okay? Right now they're 20th in rushing yards per rush allowed, okay? Then they're giving up, the 72nd most EPA per rush allowed. They ranked 22nd in the league in that category. Then they're 17th in success rate. All right, so below average run defense in the grand scheme of the season to this point. During the time where Alex Highsmith was out and Nick Herbig was the every down starter for this Steelers defense alongside TJ Watt, during that stretch between week 3 and week 6, okay, where they won those 3 games, look at these numbers, man. They're a top 5 run defense in the league, and Nick Herbig is out there on almost every single play. They were number 1 in the league during that stretch in EPA per rush allowed. That defense was flying around, and the so-called undersized Nick Herbig, who can't run defend, was out there for a majority of the time. So this is just a narrative surrounding Nick Herbig that I think needs to stop, and the fact that it's permeated itself inside the Steelers coaching staff is super, super concerning to me. me. And all you have to do, man, is take a look at the run defense last week when you took Nick Herbig off the field. It immediately regressed back to what we saw when Herbig wasn't playing earlier on during the season, right? Like they weren't able to stop the run. Chase Brown was absolutely running all over this defense. And, I think that, the explanation of, he only had 29 snaps because, we're trying to stop the run and Nick Herbig's an undersized designated pass rusher is just not an acceptable answer to me. And frankly, Nick Herbig has been playing so good this year, guys, in both phases, right? Not just against the pass, but also against the run, that he should be getting a full starter's workload here in Pittsburgh, period, okay? And I understand you got TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, all right? But I think the best way to go about it is that you give all three of these guys an even split 3 ways so that they can all get on the field and they can keep each other fresh, not only during the course of an NFL game where you can, keep these guys fresh through all 4 quarters, but also you can keep each other fresh throughout the course of the season. All right, take a look here at what Nick Herbig's been able to do and, the production that he has had this season despite missing that first game versus the New York Jets with that injury that he was dealing with during the preseason. It's incredible, man. He leads this group right here with sacks with 4.5. Already leads TJ Watt in that category. He leads this group in quarterback hits as well, and then he leads the group in TFLs. And now I do think TJ Watt's a better player. I want to make that abundantly clear. He gets pretty much all the chip help, all the double team help, all the triple team help. All right, TJ gets that attention, and Nick Herbig is the beneficiary of that. So even though Herbig's been the more productive player, I think if the roles were reversed, Watt would be definitely taking advantage of all those one-on-one opportunities that Herbig has had the benefit of having this season because of TJ Watt. But, the point still remains. Herbig is playing maybe even like a top 15, top 10 edge rusher in the game, and he played less than 30 defensive snaps on a short week when you knew fatigue was going to play a factor in that football game, and Cincinnati was controlling the football for a lot of that game. That is just absolutely unacceptable to me, guys. And Nick Herbig, I think, needs to be injected as a full-time starter in this Steelers defense alongside TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. And hopefully this coaching staff can wake the F up in that regard, okay? Because Nick Herbig is just too good of a football player to play less than 30 snaps in an NFL football game, okay? Point blank, period. He is that good of a player, and moving forward, if this continues, man, this could be one of the main arguments that we make at the end of the season for why this team needs to move on from this coaching staff. But then Coach T also admitted in his presser today that the cornerback room with Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay, and Joey Porter Jr. Joey's not been out there as much. I think this point is mostly directed towards the guys they acquired in the offseason, and Jalen and Darius have disappointed so far this year and haven't lived up to the vision that he had for this Steelers secondary this season. This is what Mike had to say at his press conference today. He says, our cornerback certainly hasn't met my vision to this point, but I'm not discouraged. We got good people there, good players, good people, guys that got good relationships with the game, so we're just going to keep working. And my question to Coach T after hearing that he's not discouraged by it is, are you not discouraged because you think they're eventually going to be able to fulfill that vision that you have, or are you changing the vision and you think that they're going to be better suited to fulfill that new vision, if that makes any sense, right? Because we know what Tomlin's vision for this defense was heading into the season. It was a very man-heavy defense, and the Steelers have been playing quite a bit of man. They're right up there with the top teams in the National Football League in percentage of plays that is just straight-up man coverage. But on those plays, man, they have been absolutely gashed all season long, plain and simply because they're trusting Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay to hold up against some of the best receivers in the game on an island, one-on-one, and those guys just aren't those kinds of guys anymore. Back in their primes when they were younger and frankly more athletic than they are right now in their older age, they might have been able to do that. But they're older players and they have to rely more on instincts and all these different things. And frankly, those guys haven't really played a lot of man coverage in their previous stops with Darius with Philly and then with Jalen both with the Rams and Miami. Those were very zone and man match heavy systems, and now they come to Pittsburgh and they're asked to play straight man coverage, and they are just getting absolutely cooked, and it's a big problem for this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. We did a whole video on this week, guys, where I think it's the biggest problem that the Steelers defense has right now, that they're continuously putting Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay on islands, and then these teams with receivers like Justin Jefferson and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Garrett Wilson and Jamar Chase, they're just winning in these one-on-one situations, And the Steelers, at least to this point, have not made the proper adjustments to that vision that Tomlin had heading into the year. This is what Mike Tomlin had to say about his defensive vision heading into the season. You got to be able to play man-to-man, particularly versus the elite and deep groups. And the talent that we've acquired at that position, particularly the cornerback position, allows us to do that in all circumstances. When you get guys like Jalen Ramsey, Slay, and Joey Porter Jr., man, we can match up and play man-to-man versus anyone. Well, not so fast there, Mike, because that has certainly not been the case to start this season. And case in point, that Thursday Night Football loss where Jamar Chase completely killed you for 16 catches, and it should have been more than that, honestly. He had more than his fair share of drops. And listen, man, my hope is that Tomlin and Austin can find a way to adjust. And we've suggested on that video that I pointed to earlier on ways they can do that. They can play more zone coverage. They can give more help to Slay and Ramsey in terms of intermediate zone defenders and all these different things when they do play man coverage. There's a lot of different things that the Steelers can do. They could play more man match style stuff and do pattern match zone. You could do that sort of stuff. You know, there's a lot of different things that they could try, but it's pretty clear to me that man-to-man is just not working, and they need to adapt, just like they did on the offensive side of the ball this year, guys. First few weeks of the season, this offense was not working. Then they make an adjustment to put Spencer Anderson out there as a jumbo tight end, and since then the Steelers' offense has been one of the best in the league. And I think that the Steelers could take a similar jump on defense if they could make some very critical adjustments. And Mike Tomlin said this last week about being able to be adaptive and make adjustments as an NFL head coach. He said if you're inflexible from a planning perspective in that way, you're not adaptable enough to be what you need to be. I'm never too married to a vision. So I guess we'll see in the weeks to come just how married Mike Tomlin is to the vision of this being a man-heavy scheme. But yes, Pittsburgh does, and they have made adjustments not only this season, but also in years past. Like we already talked about with the jumbo personnel packages, that was a big adjustment that the Steelers made early on in the season. Also, the Steelers have already made some adjustments on defense. They started this season playing a lot of their very traditional 3-4, base 5 down fronts. And now they've gone to more of a nickel-based defense with 4 down linemen. So that certainly helped them out for the most part, outside of the Cincinnati game, since they've made that adjustment. And frankly, guys, Mike Tomlin has made adjustments year in and year out to the Steelers team to a point where, in the National Football League, guys, shit goes wrong, all right? People get injured. Quarterbacks get injured. This guy would know about that with Ben getting injured multiple times over the year and still being able to get this team to at least 500. You have to be able to adjust and adapt mid-season and even in-game to be able to win some of these tough games and get this team to at least 500 and to get themselves to a competitive standpoint. And plain simply, guys, like the NFL is just too competitive and, there's too many things that can go wrong for a head coach to get 18 straight non-losing seasons without having to adjust. And Mike Tomlin has proven that he has been able to do that throughout his career. So hopefully he's going to be able to do that in this scenario in terms of fixing the Steelers' defense. And now they just got to put the next piece of the puzzle together. I think they already fixed one of the pieces earlier in the season by going to more 4-down fronts and playing a lot of big nickel. All right, I think that's been a really positive move for the Steelers' defense. But I think the next move here is to stop playing so much just pure island, man-to-man, one-on-one coverage with Darius Slay and Jalen Ramsey. Once they stop doing that stuff, and honestly, another thing that I would change is I would rush with 4 linemen more. They like to rush with 5 a lot, and frankly, I think the pass rush is good enough where you don't need to add that 5th rusher. Use that extra defender to go out in coverage and help these guys out in coverage, all right? So there's certain things that this team, I think, that can very easily implement in the weeks to come to make this defense perform a lot better than what they have. And now coming up here on the show, Patrick Queen, a big part of this defense that needs to play better, debunks a popular narrative surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers defense this year. But before we dive into that, guys, I want to tell you about our sponsor today at Omaha Steaks. And Omaha Steaks is the official sponsor of tailgating this football season. From legendary burgers to mouth-watering steaks, deli-style franks, and so much more, you'll elevate next game day get-together with America's original butcher. And now with this exclusive code, you can get $35 off at omahasteaks.com with promo code Steelers at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. But Omaha Steaks, guys, it has been America's original butcher since 1917. Every steak is perfectly aged to maximize tenderness and hand-cut by master butchers in America's heartland. Grass-fed, grain-finished beef has more marbling for exceptional flavor and is the choice of steakhouses and professional chefs around the world. Omaha Steaks offers unrivaled quality and variety, and every bite is backed by their 100% guarantee. They also carry mouth-watering burgers, chicken, pork, and seafood, plus delectable desserts. Last night, guys, me and Cassie enjoyed some nice steaks from our friends at Omaha Steaks. I like to pan-sear my steaks, put a little bit of butter in there, some rosemary. You put a little bit of thyme in there, and then some garlic. Just absolutely beautiful. 6 minutes in the pan. 3 minutes each side. You get a perfect medium rare. You can thank me later. Make game day delicious with our sponsor today at Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com and get $35 off with promo code Steelers at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com and promo code Steelers at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. A big shout out to Omaha Steaks for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. So the narrative here surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers that I referred to before the sponsor break here is that the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is quote-unquote too predictable, and offenses know what the Steelers are going to do before they do it, and it allows them to get the ball out super fast. Now, there is an element of truth to this where, there's certainly elements of the Steelers defense that, opponents, especially divisional opponents, know that they like to do, and they work in their game plans when they do play the Steelers to try and beat those tendencies. And this was really amplified, this narrative was, after Ja'Marr Chase said this after the Thursday night win last week. Quote, "The Steelers defense did exactly what we was expecting and hoping they would do," unquote. So people heard Chase say that, and they're like, oh my gosh, my preconceived notion that, this defense is super predictable, and that's the biggest issue with the Steelers defense is true. However, that's not the entire quote. And I think that I wanted to provide some context to this here because I think it's important in terms of understanding the dynamic between offensive and defensive game planning in the National Football League. This is what Ja'Marr Chase said. So he said the same thing there. The Steelers defense did exactly what we was expecting and hoping that they would do. Man coverage. We knew they were going to put Joey on T and put Jalen on me. And we knew we knew that we were ready for it. We were going to take advantage of those opportunities, and they sure did. They came out and ran a lot of rub concepts, and of course, Ja'Marr Chase just simply cooked Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay when he was lined up against those guys one-on-one. And listen, man, this is what I've been telling you guys all week, man. I've been telling you that what Ja'Marr Chase meant by that saying is that they knew man coverage was coming because guess what? Mike Tomlin and the Steelers have been broadcasting it to whoever is willing to listen. We got Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay to play man coverage versus the best receiver groups in the league, which, by the way, includes Cincinnati. So they kind of knew exactly what the Steelers were going to do. They're going to play a lot of man coverage. They knew it was coming. And listen, man, my take on this is it doesn't matter that Cincinnati knew it was coming. If Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay did their jobs and actually executed the assignments they were asked to do and locked down Ja'Marr Chase, the thing about man and the reason why it's usually played pretty statically is because if you can actually lock up the receiver that you're guarding in man, it doesn't matter if they know it's coming or not. He's still shut down. All right. Predictability is only a vice if it's in static zone coverages, which the Steelers only played 4 of the entire football game. So predictability wasn't the issue. It was the execution from Ramsey and Slay, and it was also on the coaching because they asked Slay and Ramsey to do a job they were not capable of executing, okay? So it's less about predictability, and it's more about a disconnect between the game plan and what it asks its players to do versus what those players are actually capable of doing, which was to ask Ja'Marr Chase or to ask Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay to guard one of the premier wide receivers in this league one-on-one on an island, and that was frankly just a stupid plan by Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin, having the hubris to think that these older corners were going to be able to lock up one of the best receivers in the league one-on-one. This is what Patrick Queen had to say about Chase's comments and how, kind of providing some color and some context to what the dynamic kind of is between game plans in the National Football League. He said they know what a lot of people in the NFL run, and some defenses are going to be better than what we're doing. People on our offense knew what the Bengals defense was running, so I think it's a thing in the NFL. Certain coaches got certain ways they call a game. Offenses may know that, but at the end of the day, we get paid to play. And if you don't believe the current Steelers player that makes this point, how about the former Steelers player in Trey Essex, a former offensive lineman for the Pittsburgh Steelers? By the way, he's a great follow on Steelers Twitter if you want to give him a follow. He says, woke up with a thought. This whole predictability of the defense is being overhyped. There is so much information / analytics available to players and coaches these days. If a player didn't have a good idea of what a team's tendencies were, especially versus a divisional opponent with the same coordinators, I'd seriously question their preparation and professionalism. Of course, you have to add a few wrinkles week to week, but you are who you are. At the end of the day, it comes down to one-on-one matchups and execution, period. All right, and the truth of the matter is, guys, and kind of to provide a little bit more color to Patrick Queen and Essex's point here, is that it's about two things. Number one, player execution. Okay, the coaching staff comes up with the plan, and the players need to execute that plan. But also, the other side of the coin there is that the coaching staff needs to put their players in positions to succeed. And, plain simply, guys, if Pittsburgh, had Jalen Ramsey on Jamar Chase all game long, man-to-man, and he was locking him down, we would be praising Mike Tomlin and Teryl Austin for a great game plan, right? And we'd be praising Jalen Ramsey for shutting down one of the best receivers in the game. But that didn't happen, right? So it comes down to execution, but it also comes down to the coaching staff putting Ramsey in a position to fail by putting somebody that wasn't capable of executing the job on one of the premier talents in the league. And then maybe the biggest thing is that they didn't adjust. Once they figured out it wasn't working, which was very evident early in the game, they still didn't really double Jamar Chase, which was really the only thing that would have worked, okay? When one-to-one man coverage isn't working because Jamar Chase is cooking you, and then zone coverage isn't working because Joe Flacco is reading your defense and getting the ball out fast, the only way to stop Jamar Chase is to double him. And the Steelers only doubled him twice in the entire football game. All right, so that is a bad game plan by Mike Tomlin and Teryl Austin coming into the night, not putting his players in positions to succeed, and then B, players not executing, right? So it's two sides of the same coin, and I think we have to approach these discussions with that in mind. But, man, Pittsburgh's coaches need to have a better feel. They need to have a better feel for what their players on this team do well versus what they don't do well. They have to have a better feel for what their opponents do well and not do well, and they have to have a better feel for making mid-game adjustments and identify when something is not working. And then, I just hope that they have a better game plan next week. Or in a couple weeks when we play them again. Because if you go out versus Jamar Chase and you play one-on-one man coverage or just plain zone coverage again, you will once again get toasted. Now, before I go here, I do have one more item that I want to discuss surrounding the AFC North, which is that Lamar Jackson, quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, is still not practicing coming off that hamstring injury. It was widely reported that he's expected to go this week coming off the bye versus the Chicago Bears. But the fact that he's still not back and he's not ready to go should at least put a little bit of doubt whether or not Lamar Jackson's going to be able to come back from his hamstring injury. And this is a massive football game for the Baltimore Ravens, guys. I cannot stress enough how much they need this win. They're sitting at 1-5. They're dead last in the division. And if you don't have Lamar Jackson, you're probably going to lose to the Bears. Like, Ben Johnson knows what he's doing as an offensive play caller. That team's won 4 games straight, and the Bears are home in this football game. So if you fall to 1-6, if you're Baltimore, there is very, very little room for error for them to make the postseason, let alone win the division. All right, it's either Pittsburgh and everybody else in the division is going to have to completely crap the bed, or the Ravens are going to have to almost run the table the rest of the way to be able to make the playoffs this year, okay? Like, you usually need to get to 10 wins at least to be able to make the playoffs. If you lose this week and you're sitting at 1-6, that means you need to go, 9-1 the rest of the way to get to 10 wins? I mean, that's a really tough road even for like the elite teams in the league. Very few teams can go 9 of 10 and get victories, all right, and go 9-1 over a 10-game stretch. So, like, if they lose this week, they better hope that Lamar Jackson comes back with a vengeance, this defense turns around in a major way, and they don't have any hiccups along the way. So if they lose this week, guys, that's going to bury them even more. So we'll see what ends up happening with Lamar Jackson. We'll keep you updated on his status throughout the week, but predict it for me down there in the comments section. Will the Ravens make the playoffs this year? A lot of people still expect them to, and they are favored in many games coming up here. I think they're favored in their next 6 matchups at this point. So give me a yes or a no down there in the comments section. Will the Ravens make the playoffs this year? That'll be it for me here today, guys. Thank you so much for taking in my takes here on today's edition of Steelers News and Rumors on a Tomlin Tuesday. Tomorrow, we got even more coverage on the Pittsburgh Steelers for you guys to enjoy, so make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Till next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.